My name is Patricia, and I am 32 years old. When I was 16, my parents kicked me out of our home to give my bedroom to my pregnant twin sister, Amber. It was the most devastating betrayal I had ever experienced. Fast forward 16 years, and I have built myself a beautiful home and successful career. Now my parents and sister have lost their house and want to move in with me. After all these years, they expect me to welcome them with open arms. But things have changed. If you are curious about what happened next, stay with me. Before I begin my story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please like and subscribe so you never miss my updates. I grew up in a modest four-bedroom house in suburban Lakeville, Michigan. My childhood memories are filled with backyard barbecues, holiday gatherings, and what I once believed was unconditional family love. My parents, Frank and Diana, worked hard to provide for Amber and me. Dad was a factory supervisor, and Mom worked as an administrative assistant at the local community college. We were comfortable, not wealthy, but never wanted for necessities. As identical twins, Amber and I shared everything growing up. We had the same heart-shaped face, hazel eyes, and chestnut hair. People often couldn't tell us apart, which we found amusing and occasionally used to our advantage, especially when playing pranks on our teachers or friends. We shared closed toys and secrets. At least that was how it started. Looking back now, I can see the early signs of favoritism toward Amber that I dismissed at the time. When we turned 12 and were finally given our own rooms, Amber got the slightly larger one with the better view. When we both wanted to join the school band, but our parents could only afford one instrument rental, Amber got the flute she wanted, while I was told to focus on academics instead. These were small things easily rationalized, and I loved my sister too much to be jealous. I was always the more studious one, earning straight A's while participating in the math club and science olympiad. I kept a neat room, did my chores without being asked, and saved my allowance carefully. By contrast, Amber was the social butterfly constantly surrounded by friends, joining cheerleading, and attending every school event. She was outgoing, where I was reserved, spontaneous, where I was methodical. My dream was to become an architect. I covered my bedroom walls with sketches of buildings I designed, floor plans cut from magazines, and posters of famous structures from around the world. Every birthday and Christmas, I asked for books on architecture and design software. My parents seemed supportive in their way, though they often called it my drawing hobby, rather than my career aspiration. My best friend Zoe lived 3 houses down from ours. We met in kindergarten and became inseparable. Her family was warm and demonstrative in ways mine wasn't. At their dinner table, everyone's opinions mattered equally, and I always felt truly seen. Zoe's parents, Margaret and David, treated me like a second daughter. I didn't realize then how important this connection would become. By junior year of high school, I had maintained a 4.0 GPA and was already researching colleges with strong architecture programs. I participated in a summer internship at a local firm, which strengthened my resolve to pursue this path. I was responsible, focused, and determined. Amber, meanwhile, was dating a senior named Jake, captain of the football team, and her grades were slipping. Mom and Dad were much harder on me when I got a B+ than they were on Amber when she barely passed her classes. The differences in how our parents treated us became more pronounced as we entered our teen years. When I wanted to stay late at school for a study group, I faced an interrogation. When Amber came home past curfew, there were sighs and mild reprimands, but no consequences. I told myself it was because I was the responsible one and didn't need as much supervision. I was wrong. The summer before junior year, our family took a vacation to a lake cottage. It would be our last holiday together. I remember watching the sunset with Amber on the dock, talking about our futures. She wanted to become a hairstylist or makeup artist, perhaps work in television someday. I shared my latest college research with her. In that moment, everything felt possible for both of us. We had no idea how dramatically our paths would diverge within months. As we returned to school that fall, Amber became increasingly secretive. She spent most of her time with Jake, often missing family dinners. I was busy with advanced placement classes and volunteer work to strengthen my college applications. Our twin connection remained, but we were growing in different directions. It seemed natural part of growing up. I never imagined it was the calm before a storm that would tear our family apart and leave me adrift. It happened 3 months into junior year. I came home from debate team practice to find my parents and Amber sitting silently at the kitchen table. Mom had been crying. Dad looked angrier than I had ever seen him. Amber stared at her hands folded in her lap. What happened? Is everyone okay? I asked, dropping my backpack by the door. Mom looked at Amber and nodded slightly. Amber raised her head, eyes red-rimmed and puffy. I'm pregnant, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stood frozen, processing what this meant. Amber was 16, same as me. We had our whole futures ahead of us. This would change everything. Are you sure? I finally asked. 3 tests, Mom said flatly. And the doctor confirmed it this morning. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making us all jump. That worthless boyfriend of hers wants nothing to do with it. Says he's not ready to be a father. Going to college next year. Can you believe that leaves my daughter to deal with this alone? I slid into the empty chair beside Amber and took her hand. Despite my shock, my twin instinct to protect her kicked in. What are you going to do? We're keeping the baby, Mom answered for her. This family sticks together. We'll make it work. I noticed she said we, not she. Already this was becoming a family project. I looked at Amber wondering if this was truly her choice, or if our parents had decided for her. Jake doesn't want to be involved at all, I asked gently. Amber shook her head. He blocked my number when I told him. His parents called and said we're on our own. The next few weeks were tense as our family adjusted to this new reality. Mom took Amber to doctor appointments while Dad worked overtime to start saving for the baby's expenses. I tried to maintain normalcy by focusing on school, but the atmosphere at home had shifted dramatically. A family meeting was called one Sunday afternoon about a month after the revelation. I assumed it would be about finances, or scheduling the practical aspects of preparing for a baby in the house. I was wrong. Amber needs support now more than ever, Dad began. This means we all need to make sacrifices. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what sacrifices they had in mind. I was already helping more around the house and had offered to babysit once the baby arrived. Patricia, we need you to drop some of your extracurriculars, Mom said. Amber needs rides to appointments, and she shouldn't be alone during this difficult time. I felt a knot form in my stomach. My extracurriculars were crucial for college applications. But family comes first, right? Which ones? I asked cautiously. Debate team and that volunteer thing at the library. Dad answered without hesitation. You can keep the math club since it's only once a week. I swallowed hard. But those are important for my college applications. Architecture programs are competitive and I need a well-rounded resume. Your sister is going to be a mother, Mom said, her tone suggesting I was being selfish. Some things are more important than college applications. Over the following weeks, I drove Amber to appointments, held her hair when she had morning sickness, and completed household chores while she rested. I watched my carefully constructed future begin to crumble one sacrifice at a time. My bedroom, once my sanctuary filled with architecture dreams, became a shared space, as Amber would often lie on my bed when she wanted company. My desk became cluttered with baby name books and pregnancy pamphlets. Gradually, my own possessions were pushed aside to make room for Amber's expanding presence. One evening, I came home late from a math competition to find Amber trying on my clothes. Her expanding waistline meant many of her own no longer fit. Mom said I could borrow some of your things, she explained, wearing my favorite sweater. We're the same size. Well, I'm a bit bigger now, obviously. I bit back my frustration. It was just clothes. But it felt symbolic of how my identity was being erased to accommodate Amber's new status. The final straw came when I overheard my parents talking late one night. I had gotten up for a glass of water and paused in the hallway when I heard my name. Patricia will understand, Mom was saying. She's always been the practical one. I don't like it either, Dad replied. But what choice do we have? The baby needs space and Amber needs privacy. Patricia's room is the only option that makes sense. My heart began to pound. Were they talking about what I thought they were? We'll present it as a temporary arrangement, Mom continued, just until we can figure out something more permanent. I slipped back to my room, mind racing. They couldn't possibly expect me to give up my bedroom, could they? Where would I go? The house didn't have extra space. We had 3 bedrooms plus my parents' room. My room was the largest of the kids' rooms because I had won it in a coin toss years ago when we stopped sharing. I tried to convince myself I had misunderstood that they wouldn't ask this of me, but deep down I knew what was coming. The favoritism that had always existed was about to reach its breaking point, and I was the one who would be broken. The confrontation came on a Saturday morning. I was at my desk working on a design for my architecture portfolio when my parents knocked and entered without waiting for a response. They stood awkwardly near the door, exchanging glances before Dad cleared his throat. "Patricia, we need to talk about the room situation," he began. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "What room situation?" Mom stepped forward, adopting the gentle voice she used when delivering bad news. "Honey, with the baby coming, Amber needs more space, a proper nursery area with room for a crib-changing table and all the baby supplies." "Okay," I said slowly. "So, what are you suggesting?" "We think it makes sense for you to move into the smaller bedroom and let Amber have this room." Dad said, his tone suggesting this was already decided. "Your room has the better layout for a nursery, and it's closer to our bedroom, so we can help with the baby at night." I stared at them in disbelief. The smaller bedroom was actually a converted office barely 9 by 10 feet. It had no closet, just a small wardrobe, and the window faced the neighbor's brick wall. My room, by contrast, was spacious, with built-in shelves for my architecture books and models, a large desk area, and morning sunlight that streamed through 2 windows. "But this is my room," I said, hating how childish it sounded. "I need the desk space for my projects, my portfolio, my future." "Patricia, your sister is having a baby," Mom said, as though I needed reminding. "A baby needs more space than your hobby projects." "Architecture isn't a hobby," I protested. "It's my future career, my life plan. You know how hard I've been working toward this." Dad sighed heavily. "Plans change. Family has to adapt. This isn't just about you anymore." "It's never been about me," I said, my voice rising as years of subtle favoritism crystallized into this moment. "It's always been about Amber. Always." "That's not fair," Mom said sharply. "We've always supported both of you equally." I laughed bitterly. "Really? When have you ever asked Amber to sacrifice anything for me? When have my needs ever come first?" "This isn't about keeping score," Dad snapped. "This is about a baby, an innocent child who needs our support. A baby Amber chose to have," I said, immediately regretting my words as Mom's face hardened. "I can't believe you would be so selfish," she said. "This is your niece or nephew we're talking about, your own blood." I tried a different approach. "What about the basement? We could convert part of that into a nursery. Or the dining room, we never use it except on holidays." "The basement floods in spring and the dining room is open to the kitchen," Dad dismissed. "This is the only solution that makes sense. So I'm just supposed to cram all my things into that tiny room. What about my desk, my bookshelf? They won't even fit through the door." "You'll have to downsize," Mom said. "Keep only what's essential." Essential. As if my dreams, my work, my space were all optional extras that could be discarded when inconvenient. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but refused to let them fall. "And if I say no?" I asked quietly. My parents exchanged another look, and I knew then that they had anticipated this question. Dad's face hardened. "Then you can find somewhere else to live." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "You heard me," he said coldly. "Get out. She needs your room. If you can't make this one sacrifice for your family, then maybe you don't understand what family means." I looked at my mother, hoping for support, for some recognition of how extreme this ultimatum was. Instead, she looked away, her silence a confirmation that she agreed. "You would kick out your 16-year-old daughter?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Don't be dramatic," Mom said. "Of course we don't want you to leave. We want you to be reasonable and understand the situation we're in." "The situation Amber put us in," I corrected. "That's enough," Dad shouted. "This conversation is over. You have until the end of the week to decide. Either move your things to the small room or find another place to stay." They left without another word, closing the door behind them. I sat frozen at my desk, staring at the architectural model I had spent months perfecting. It represented everything I had worked for, everything I dreamed about. And my parents were asking me to give it all up because my sister got pregnant. The next few days passed in a blur of disbelief and desperation. I tried again to reason with my parents, suggesting compromises. Could we share the room? Could we wait until summer to make changes? Could we look into adding another room to the house? Each suggestion was dismissed. Most hurtful was Amber's silence throughout this process. Not once did she advocate for me or suggest an alternative. She merely watched with sad eyes as our parents dismantled my life to make room for hers. When I confronted her privately asking if she thought this was fair, she shrugged helplessly. I didn't ask for this to happen, Patty, but the baby is coming whether we like it or not. And you think the solution is to make me homeless? I asked incredulously. Don't be dramatic, she echoed our mother. They just want you to use the smaller room. A room that can't fit my desk, my books, or anything I need for my future. They're choosing your mistake over my success, and you're letting them. Amber's eyes flashed with anger. My baby isn't a mistake, and maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your perfect future, you'd understand what family really means. It was then I realized I had no allies in that house. The family that had raised me was willing to discard me for the sake of convenience. The twin I had loved unconditionally had chosen herself over me, and I had a decision to make. The day before my parents' deadline, I began packing my most precious possessions. My architecture books, my design portfolio, my laptop, and enough clothes to fit in 2 suitcases. I carefully wrapped the model of my dream house and placed it in a box, unsure if I would ever have a place to display it again. As I worked, Mom passed by my open door several times, her expression a mixture of concern and irritation. I could tell she had expected me to give in to accept the smaller room despite my protests. My quiet packing was an answer she hadn't anticipated. On my last night in that house, I lay awake staring at the ceiling I had gazed at for 16 years. The glow and the dark stars I had arranged into accurate constellations in elementary school. The subtle water stain in the corner from when the roof leaked during a thunderstorm. All the marks of a childhood that was ending abruptly, not by my choice. In the morning, I called Zoe, my voice breaking as I finally let the tears fall. Within an hour, her parents were at my door with their minivan ready to help me move my things and offer me shelter I couldn't find in my own home. My parents watched in stunned silence as I carried box after box to the waiting vehicle. Perhaps they had never truly believed I would choose my dignity and future over their demands. Amber remained in her room, unwilling to witness my departure. As I placed the last box in the van, Dad approached. You're really doing this, abandoning your family when we need you most. I looked at him. This man I had respected and loved my entire life, and felt nothing but a hollow ache. You abandoned me first, I said quietly. I'm just following your example. I climbed into the van without looking back, leaving behind not just a room, but the illusion of unconditional family love I had believed in for 16 years. I moved into Zoe's house that day, into a small guest room with floral wallpaper and a twin bed. Her parents welcomed me with a warmth that made the contrast with my own family even more painful. Margaret hugged me tightly and whispered, You stay as long as you need, sweetie. We've got plenty of room. David carried my boxes upstairs, handling my architectural model with careful respect. This is really impressive work, Patricia. You've got a real talent here. Their kindness nearly broke me. I had grown so accustomed to having my passion dismissed as a hobby that genuine recognition felt foreign, almost uncomfortable. That first night, Zoe and I stayed up late talking in whispers. She was furious on my behalf, ready to storm back to my house and confront my parents. I appreciated her loyalty, but knew it wouldn't change anything. I can't believe they would do this to you, she said for the 100th time. Over a room, just a stupid room. It's not just about the room, I explained. It's about who matters more, who's worth sacrificing for. And I guess I know the answer now. I called the school counselor the next morning to explain my situation. Ms. Reeves was alarmed that I was no longer living at home and initially suggested contacting social services. I begged her not to, explaining that I had safe housing with Zoe's family and that involving authorities would only make things worse. I just need to finish high school, I told her. Then I can go to college and build my own life. Please don't make this harder than it already is. She reluctantly agreed, but insisted on having a conference with Zoe's parents to confirm they were willing to house me. Margaret and David assured her they considered me part of their family and would ensure I completed my education. The practical challenges of being essentially homeless at 16 were numerous. I needed a job to pay for my personal expenses, as I couldn't rely on my parents anymore. Zoe's father helped me get hired at the hardware store where he worked part-time on weekends. I arranged my schedule to work every Saturday and Sunday plus Thursday evenings. My grades suffered initially as I adjusted to working while maintaining my course load. I dropped from straight A's to B's in several classes, which was devastating to my college prospects. But I had no choice. Independence came at a cost. The emotional toll was even greater. I would see my parents occasionally around town, encounters that were awkward and tense. Mom would ask how I was doing in a careful voice that never quite met my eyes. Dad would nod stiffly and make comments about how I could come home when you're ready to be reasonable. Neither ever apologized or acknowledged the magnitude of what they had done. In their minds, I was the unreasonable one, the selfish daughter who abandoned her family in their time of need. Amber gave birth to a boy they named Tyler in April of my junior year. I learned about it not from a call or text, but from seeing my mother post photos on social media. The pictures showed my room transformed into a blue and gray nursery, all traces of my existence erased. My desk had been replaced by a crib, my bookshelves by a changing table. I had complex feelings about my nephew. I wanted to meet him, to hold him, and be the aunt I had imagined being when I first learned of Amber's pregnancy. But I couldn't bring myself to enter that house again, to stand in what was once my room, and pretend everything was normal. Instead, I sent a small gift through Zoe's mom, a stuffed elephant and a card signed simply, Aunt Patricia. I received no acknowledgement. High school graduation arrived in June the following year. Zoe's parents threw a small celebration for both of us in their backyard. They presented me with a gift card to an art supply store and a cake that read, "Congratulations, future architect." My own parents attended the ceremony, but left immediately after claiming they needed to get back to the baby. The real victory came when I received a partial scholarship to State University's architecture program. It wouldn't cover everything, but combined with federal loans and my savings from working at the hardware store, it would be enough. I was going to college just as I had planned before my world imploded. The day I packed for college, Margaret helped me fold my clothes, while David gave me practical advice about campus safety. They had become the parents I needed when my own had failed me. "You always have a home with us," Margaret said as she hugged me goodbye. "During breaks after graduation, whenever you need it. This room is yours." I cried then, overwhelmed by the generous love of this family that had no obligation to me, but had chosen to make me their own. It was a stark contrast to my blood relatives who had cast me aside when I became inconvenient. As I drove away to begin my college journey, I felt a mixture of sadness and determination. I was leaving behind not just Zoe's family, but the last lingering hopes that my own parents would recognize their mistake and make amends. It was time to build a future without them. College was transformative. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who shared my passion for architecture. My professors recognized my talent and pushed me to develop it further. I thrived in this environment where hard work and creativity were valued. I lived in the cheapest dormitory on campus, a no-frills building with communal bathrooms and tiny shared rooms. My roommate Julia was a pre-med student who spent most of her time in the library, which suited me fine. I needed the space to work on my design projects, which often sprawled across every available surface. Financial survival required multiple jobs. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus cafe plus occasional weekend shifts at a local bookstore. During summers, I took full-time positions in retail or food service, whatever paid best. Sleep became a luxury social life almost non-existent. Despite these challenges, I maintained a 3.8 GPA and began building my professional portfolio. My focus and determination impressed my professors, particularly Professor Williams, who became my mentor. Professor Williams was a practicing architect who taught design studio courses. She recognized something in me that I had almost forgotten existed, a spark of creativity that had nearly been extinguished by survival mode. "Your designs show resilience," she told me after class one day. "There's a practical elegance to them that comes from understanding limitations and working within them creatively." I hadn't thought of my hardships as an asset before, but she was right. Living with constraints had taught me to maximize every inch of space to find beauty and functionality. These lessons inform my design philosophy in ways my classmates with their more traditional backgrounds couldn't replicate. During my second year, Professor Williams recommended me for a competitive internship at Myers and Associates, a mid-sized firm specializing in sustainable residential design. I worked there 20 hours a week during the academic year, and full-time during breaks learning every aspect of the business, from filing permits to client presentations. My relationship with my family remained distant and strained. I made a few attempts at reconciliation during my freshman year, calling home on holidays and sending birthday cards. The conversations were superficial, focused on weather and classes, never addressing the elephant in the room. During winter break that first year, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee at a neutral location. She spent most of the time showing me photos of Tyler, now walking and talking, and Amber, who had started beauty school part-time. "Your old room looks so cute now," she said, showing me a picture of the nursery completely redecorated. "We removed that old desk and put in the most adorable rocking chair." Her casual mention of disposing of my desk, the centerpiece of my architectural dreams, confirmed that they had never valued what mattered to me. I excused myself early from that coffee date and stopped making efforts after that. I learned from occasional social media glimpses that my family had permanently converted my room into Tyler's bedroom. Amber continued living at home, attending beauty school sporadically between jobs at local salons. My parents subsidized her education and provided free childcare, allowing her the flexibility I had never been afforded. Meanwhile, I graduated with honors after 4 intense years. No family members attended my graduation ceremony. Professor Williams and my colleagues from Myers and Associates cheered from the audience as I received my degree. They took me to dinner afterward and presented me with a professional drafting table, a gift that brought tears to my eyes. "You've earned this," Professor Williams said. "I've never had a student work harder or overcome more." The contrast between my chosen family's celebration and my blood family's absence crystallized something for me. I didn't need people in my life who couldn't recognize my value. I was building something beautiful without them. After graduation, Myers and Associates offered me a full-time position as a junior architect. I accepted immediately and threw myself into work designing energy-efficient homes for clients who appreciated my attention to functionality and sustainable materials. 6 years into my career, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small piece of land just outside the city. It wasn't much, a half-acre lot with some trees and a view of distant hills, but it was mine, and on it I would build the home I had been designing in my head since I was 16 years old. I took out a construction loan and served as my own general contractor, calling in favors from industry contacts and doing much of the finish work myself. Every weekend for 18 months, I was on site building not just a house, but a statement of who I had become. The result was a modest but stunning 2-bedroom home with an open floor plan walls of windows facing the eastern hills and a studio space flooded with natural light. It was efficient, beautiful, and completely mine, untainted by painful memories or others' expectations. As I stood in the completed space on my 32nd birthday, I felt a sense of accomplishment that transcended the building itself. I had created not just a home, but a life on my own terms. I had proven that being cast out was the beginning of my story, not the end. The irony wasn't lost on me that being forced from my childhood home had set me on the path to creating a space far more meaningful than the room I had fought to keep. Sometimes losing what you think you need opens the door to what you truly deserve. The call came on a Tuesday evening as I was finishing dinner in my beautiful kitchen with its quartz countertops and handcrafted tile backsplash. I almost didn't answer when I saw Mom on the caller ID, but curiosity won out. We hadn't spoken in over a year. "Patricia, are you there?" Her voice sounded older, more fragile than I remembered. "I'm here," I replied neutrally. "Is everything okay?" There was a pause, then a deep sigh. "Not really. We're having some financial problems. Your father's company downsized, and he's been out of work for 6 months. We've been getting by on my salary and some help from Amber, but it's not enough." I waited, sensing there was more coming. "We're losing the house, Patricia. The bank is foreclosing next month." A complicated mix of emotions washed over me. Sympathy for their situation, certainly, but also a strange sense of justice. The house that had ejected me was now ejecting them. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "That must be difficult. We've been looking at apartments, but everything is so expensive, and we need at least 3 bedrooms for all of us." The all of us caught my attention. All of you. Yes, me, your father, Amber, and Tyler. He's 14 now, you know. He needs his own space. I almost laughed at the irony. Tyler needed his own space just as his mother had needed mine all those years ago. "Anyway," Mom continued, her voice taking on a brightness that immediately put me on guard. "I remembered that you bought a house a few years back. Zoe's mother mentioned it was quite spacious." My stomach tightened. "It's adequate for my needs," I said cautiously. "Well, we were thinking since family should stick together in hard times, maybe we could stay with you until we get back on our feet. Just temporarily, of course." The audacity of this request left me momentarily speechless. After 16 years of minimal contact after kicking me out as a teenager, they now expected to move into my home. "Mom," I finally said, "I don't think that would work." "Why not?" she asked, genuinely sounding surprised. "You have that whole house to yourself. Surely you have room for your family. We're not asking for charity, we'd contribute what we could to expenses." "It's not about money," I explained. "My home is my sanctuary. It's designed specifically for my needs." "But family comes first," she insisted, using the same phrase they had wielded against me years ago. "We took care of you for 16 years. Now we need your help." The parallel was so perfect, it felt almost scripted. "And when I needed your help at 16, you kicked me out," I said quietly. "That was different," she protested. "Amber needed the space for the baby. We had no choice." "There are always choices, Mom. You chose Amber over me then. I'm choosing my peace now." She was silent for a moment. "I think we should discuss this in person. Can we come see your house this weekend? Your father and I and Amber and Tyler too. I'm sure once you see your nephew, you'll feel differently. Blood is thicker than water after all." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse outright to protect my space from their intrusion. But another part, perhaps the architect in me, wanted them to see what I had built, to witness the success they had never believed possible. "Saturday afternoon," I conceded. "But this isn't a discussion about moving in. This is a visit, nothing more." Of course," she agreed quickly. "We just want to see you and your home. It's been too long." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen island, mind racing. They were coming here to my sanctuary, bringing with them all the pain and rejection of the past. And they wanted to move in to take over my space, just as they had taken my room 16 years ago. I spent the next few days cleaning and organizing, not because I cared what they thought of my housekeeping, but because I wanted every detail to reflect my success. I wanted them to see exactly what I had accomplished without their support. Saturday arrived sunny and clear. I had just arranged a vase of fresh flowers on the dining table when the doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to face my past. They looked older, of course. Dad's hair was now completely gray, his shoulders slightly stooped. Mom had gained weight, and new lines framed her eyes and mouth. Behind them stood Amber, still recognizably my twin despite the years and differences in our lifestyles, and beside her, a lanky teenager with her hazel eyes who could only be Tyler. "Patricia," Mom said, stepping forward for an awkward hug. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," I replied, stepping back to let them enter. "Come in." Their eyes widened as they took in the soaring ceiling of the entryway, the open staircase with its custom railings, the walls of windows showcasing the wooded landscape beyond. "You designed this?" Dad asked, his tone somewhere between impressed and disbelieving. "Every inch," I confirmed. I was my own architect and general contractor. I gave them a tour, watching their expressions shift from polite interest to genuine awe as they moved through the spaces I had created. My studio with its perfect light for drafting, the guest room that doubled as a library, the kitchen where form and function blended seamlessly. Tyler seemed particularly impressed by the technology integrated throughout the house, the smart home features I had installed myself. "This is sick," he said, watching the motorized blinds adjust automatically to the changing sunlight. You really built all this? I did. I told him, feeling an unexpected connection to this nephew I barely knew. It took a lot of work, but it was worth it. After the tour, we gathered in the living room. Mom immediately began pointing out areas where they could fit their belongings. We wouldn't need much space, she said. Amber and Tyler could share the guest room, and your father and I could use that office area. Or we could put a sofa bed in the living room if that would work better. I looked at her incredulously. Mom, I haven't agreed to this. As I said on the phone, this is just a visit. But surely now that you've seen us, now that you've met Tyler properly, you understand that we need to stay together as a family, she insisted. Dad leaned forward. Patricia, be reasonable. We have nowhere else to go that we can afford. You have all this space. It just makes sense. What makes sense, I said carefully, is for each of us to take responsibility for our own lives and choices, just as I had to do when I was 16. Amber, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. You're still holding that against us. After all these years, Tyler needs a stable home, and you're going to deny him that because of some ancient grudge. This isn't about grudges, I replied. This is about boundaries. This home represents everything I've worked for since I left. It's my safe space designed specifically for my needs and lifestyle. So you're just going to let your family become homeless? Amber demanded. After everything we did for you growing up? I laughed then, a sound without humor. Everything you did for me. You mean like taking my room and watching silently as our parents kicked me out? Or like never once checking on me during all those years I struggled to put myself through college? That kind of everything. That's not fair, Mom interjected. We always loved you. We just had to make difficult choices. And now I'm making mine, I said firmly. I will not have you move into my home. I can help you find an affordable apartment. I can even loan you money for a security deposit. But you will not live here. Dad's face darkened with the same expression I remembered from that terrible day in my bedroom. After all we sacrificed for you, this is how you repay us, by turning your back when we need you. 16 years of suppressed anger suddenly broke through. Sacrificed for me, you sacrificed me. You threw away your daughter for convenience. You chose Amber over me at every turn, and when keeping both of us became too complicated, you discarded me without a second thought. The room fell silent. Tyler looked between us adults with wide eyes, clearly processing family history he had never heard before. Is that true? He asked his mother. They kicked Aunt Patricia out because of me. Amber flushed. It wasn't because of you. It was a complicated situation. It wasn't complicated at all, I said quietly. It was very simple. There was a room and 2 daughters who needed it. They chose one daughter over the other. End of story. I turned to my parents. I built this home with my own hands after you took mine away. I will not give it up to the same people who decided I wasn't worth keeping. Not now, not ever. Mom began to cry those manipulative tears I remembered from childhood conflicts. How can you be so selfish after everything we've been through? Everything you've been through, I echoed. What about what I went through, homeless at 16, working multiple jobs while trying to stay in school, putting myself through college without any family support? Did you ever once consider what I was going through? The silence that followed was answer enough. I think it's time for you to leave, I said, standing up. I'll call you tomorrow about the apartment search and deposit loan. That's the help I'm willing to offer. They filed out in stunned silence, all except Tyler, who hung back for a moment. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think what they did to you was wrong, and this house is really amazing. His simple acknowledgement meant more than he could know. Thank you, Tyler, I replied. I hope we can get to know each other better, regardless of what happens with the rest of the family. He nodded and followed his mother to the car. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted by the confrontation, but also strangely liberated. For the first time, I had stood up to my family not from a position of teenage defiance, but adult strength. I had named the harm they had done and refused to allow it to continue. As I looked around my beautiful home, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This was mine, earned through years of struggle and determination. No one would take it from me again. The days following my family's visit were strangely quiet. I expected angry calls or guilt-tripping texts, but there was only silence. At first I was relieved, then concerned. Had I been too harsh, too unforgiving? I called Zoe, who had remained my closest friend through all these years. She listened as I recounted the confrontation and my subsequent doubts. "Patricia," she said firmly when I finished, "you did nothing wrong. They kicked you out as a child and now want to move into the home you built for yourself. The audacity is breathtaking." "But they're still my family," I said, voicing the conflict that had troubled me for years. "Shouldn't family help each other?" "Help flows both ways," Zoe replied. "When did they ever help you when you needed it? Family isn't just about blood. It's about consistent care and respect. You offered reasonable help with an apartment deposit. That's more than generous given your history." She was right, of course. I had spent years in therapy working through the abandonment trauma of being expelled from my childhood home. Dr. Myers, my therapist during graduate school, had helped me understand that I wasn't obligated to sacrifice my well-being for people who had demonstrated they wouldn't do the same for me. "Your worth isn't determined by how much you're willing to endure for others," she had told me in one particularly breakthrough session. "Boundaries aren't selfish, they're necessary." Those words echoed in my mind as I made a decision. I would keep my promise to help them find housing, but I would maintain my boundaries. My home would remain my sanctuary. I called my mother the next day and left a voicemail when she didn't answer. "I've researched some affordable apartments in safe neighborhoods. I'm also prepared to cover the security deposit and first month's rent to help you get established. Please call me back when you're ready to discuss options." 3 days passed before I received a text from Amber, not Mom. "We found a place. Small, but okay. Tyler wants to know if he can visit you sometime." The message surprised me. I had expected more resistance, more guilt-tripping, and the request about Tyler was unexpected, but welcome. "Of course he can visit," I replied. "I'd like to get to know my nephew." 2 weeks later, Tyler showed up on my doorstep on a Saturday afternoon. Tall and lanky with a mop of brown hair. He had Amber's eyes, but a quietness that reminded me more of myself at that age. "Mom dropped me off," he explained. "Said she'd pick me up in a couple hours if that's okay." I welcomed him in, and we spent an initially awkward afternoon that gradually warmed as we discovered shared interests. He was artistic, though more drawn to digital design than architecture. He showed me some animations he had created on his phone, surprisingly sophisticated for a 14-year-old. "No one else in the family gets it," he confided. "Mom wants me to focus on practical skills, and Grandpa says art isn't a real job." I smiled sadly at how familiar that sounded. They said the same things to me about architecture. But look around you, this is what following my passion built. "How did you do it?" he asked. "After they kicked you out, I mean. Weren't you scared?" "Terrified," I admitted. "But I had good people who helped me. Zoe's family took me in, my professors believed in me, I found mentors and friends who supported my dreams when my family couldn't." "I never knew any of this until the other day," Tyler said. "They never talk about you, except sometimes Mom would say you were too busy with your career to visit." The mischaracterization stung, but didn't surprise me. "There's a lot of complicated history there," I said carefully. "But I want you to know that none of it has anything to do with you. I've always wanted to know you, but it was difficult given the circumstances." Tyler's visits became regular after that. Every other weekend, Amber would drop him off for a few hours. Sometimes we worked on design projects together, me with my architectural drafting and him with his digital art. Other times we just talked, filling in the 16-year gap in our relationship. Through Tyler, I got glimpses of my family's life. They had moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in an older complex across town. Dad had found work at a warehouse making less than his previous job, but enough to cover rent. Amber was working full-time at a salon now that Tyler was old enough to be home alone after school. They were managing, not thriving, but not destitute either. The security deposit I had provided, true to my word, had helped them secure housing they could afford. It was enough involvement to satisfy my conscience without sacrificing my boundaries. My own healing continued through these months. I started a support group for adults estranged from family members, finding comfort in sharing experiences with others who understood the complex grief of family rejection. One woman in the group, Elaine, had been disowned by her parents when she came out as gay 20 years earlier. The hardest part, she told us, was accepting that forgiveness doesn't have to mean reconciliation. I've forgiven them in my heart, but that doesn't mean I need to subject myself to their continued judgment. Her words resonated deeply. I had been struggling with the concept of forgiveness, feeling that if I truly forgave my parents, I should welcome them back fully into my life. But Elaine's perspective offered a different path, one where I could release the anger without removing the boundaries that protected me. Gradually, I developed what my therapist called detached compassion toward my family. I could wish them well and even help in limited ways without becoming emotionally entangled in their drama or sacrificing my own well-being. One unexpected development was my growing relationship with Tyler. As we spent more time together, I recognized in him the same creative spirit that had driven me, the same feeling of being misunderstood by a family that valued practicality over passion. During one of his visits, he confessed he was struggling in school despite being bright. "I can't focus on stuff that doesn't interest me," he admitted, "and then I get in trouble for drawing during class." I recognized the pattern from my own youth. "Have you ever been evaluated for ADHD?" I asked gently. He looked surprised. Monsieur. "No? You think I might have that?" "I was diagnosed in college," I told him. It explained a lot about why I could hyper-focus on design projects for hours, but struggled with subjects that didn't engage me. Proper treatment made a huge difference in my ability to succeed. With Amber's reluctant permission, I took Tyler for an evaluation. The diagnosis was confirmed, and with proper support, his academic performance improved dramatically. It was the first time I'd been able to provide meaningful guidance as his aunt, and it strengthened our bond. As months passed, my interactions with the rest of the family remained distant but civil. Occasional text messages, brief conversations when dropping off or picking up Tyler. No mention was ever made of the confrontation in my living room or the years of estrangement before it. Perhaps that was for the best. Some wounds run too deep for simple conversation to heal, but the small, careful connections we were building now were better than the complete rupture of before. One afternoon, nearly a year after their visit to my home, I received a text from Amber that surprised me. "Tyler has an art showcase at school tomorrow evening. He asked if you would come, 6 p.m. at Jefferson High." I attended, of course, standing proudly before his digital animation displayed on a classroom monitor. My parents were there too, nodding stiffly in my direction, but keeping their distance. It was awkward but manageable, our shared pride in Tyler, creating a temporary bridge across the chasm between us. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the strange, imperfect healing that had occurred. Not a Hollywood reconciliation with tearful apologies and instant forgiveness, but something messier and more realistic. A nephew reclaimed, a limited, careful connection reestablished, boundaries maintained, but hatred released. My beautiful home waited for me, lit warmly against the evening sky. I had built this sanctuary not just with lumber and concrete, but with resilience and determination. It represented not just where I lived, but who I had become, a woman strong enough to survive rejection and create something beautiful from the pieces. Inside, I walked through rooms designed by my own hand-touched possessions, earned through my own efforts. This was the life I had built after being told I didn't matter enough to keep. And it was a good life, rich with meaningful work, loyal friends, and now even a reconnection with the nephew I had barely known. The broken pieces of my past would never fit together perfectly again. The cracks would always show. But in those cracks, something new had grown, something unexpected and valuable. Not a perfect family, but a life of my own creation built on my own terms. And that, I realized, was the most beautiful design of all. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took you for granted? I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments. Remember that protecting your peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life journeys. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to rebuild after being broken.